Rich Frank, Frank Rich. Frank. No, it's funny, man. I did that as a joke because so my assistant and I, like, she always is like, hey, Rich Frank. I mean, Frank Rich. So, like, always, like, because, like, I know you were scheduled, we had to reschedule you. And so she's always like, hey, Rich Frank, Frank Rich. Like, so, like,
Yeah,
it's kind of like
it's the
this.
curse of it's the curse of two first names, man. And I didn't know
Yeah.
if you were doing it on purpose or not, but it's funny. I know people that have been in my life kind of as acquaintances and whatnot. So people you don't spend a lot of time with, but you'll see
Yeah.
them every few weeks or months. Still to this day, they call me Rich. I just let it slide at this point. I'm like, some people maybe that's just how they, it's like you call some people by their last name, to
Yeah.
others you don't. I'm happen to have two first names, and yeah, excited to be here, man.
Well, it's okay, man, because like my name, so no kidding around. I went to go get my CCW yesterday, as you and I are recording, and there was this older gentleman. He was probably in his 60s, like sitting next to me, and but we had to all go around the class and introduce ourselves. There's about 10 of us in there, and it happens all the time. Like I always joke that there's no man under the age of 70 with my name still around. I think I'm the only one left. But so like this guy is like, oh, he's like, my dad was named Larry. And I was like, yeah, and you're 60. Like, so like, and he's, it's like, but, it's, or I hear this one, it's like, oh, like, where's Mo and Curly? I'm like, oh yeah, I've never heard that one.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or, I hear, Larry the Cable Guy, I hear that one. Or I hear Larry. So because my name is Larry Hagner, so when I was a little kid, I barely remember the show, but it was Dallas. And I remember Larry Hagman played JR. So I used to be in martial arts for about 10 years, and my instructor gave me the nickname JR. So there was actually, in the martial arts I did, there was a lot of people that didn't even know my real name because everybody called me JR, but it was a nickname because like Larry Hagman. So
yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
Well, I'm a junior, and I think growing up, like I didn't love the name. Like I went by the nickname Frankie because my dad's name was Frank, so most people knew me as Frankie. But in like school and kind of organized stuff, like it was always Frank. And as a kid growing up, it was like an older man's name. But when I look across kind of kids' names today, like I'm so grateful I was given like a strong, powerful name, like Frank Rich. Like that's a that's a name you'd expect to see on a CEO's door, right? It's like CEO Frank Rich. Like if my name was like Scooby or something, or some of these kids' names today, it's like Butterfly or whatever it is. It's like it's removed from any power and authority. I put Larry up there as well. Like Larry's a name that holds some power, some persona behind it. You'd expect Larry to be running some things, right? Not taking orders from others.
I mean, I guess it depends, but it's funny. Like, so speaking of names, when I was in Boy Scouts, I did Boy Scouts for 1 year, and I'm sorry, but if your name is Richard and you go by Dick, like that's on you.
Yeah.
But my Boy Scout and like the pack leader, his name was Rich Harden, and he went by Dick.
No way.
And this was like an older, like professional dude, like and like so when we go to like things and he'd introduce himself, like all of us, all 12-year-old boys, we'd just be like cracking up. We're like, Dick Harden, really? Like, why don't you just go by Rich?
Yeah.
I'm
See, I immediately went to like this dude. He's spoofing him, man. Like he's playing some type of joke on all these kids. Like, unfortunately, back then, like there was no Google around, so you couldn't Google and be like, "Is this his real name?" But
I know, right?
It's probably the first thing I would do if I met somebody. Like, anyway, I was gonna go a really dark place with a comment there, but we'll leave that for maybe when we're not recording.
No, man. So it's crazy that you and I are recording, and that's because today, like Mondays are my podcast day. I usually do like 4 interviews in one day, and Joshua Broom do you know who Joshua Broom is?
I do know Josh. Yeah. We were in talks recently. He's obviously on his book tour. I'm sure you had him on the show for that reason. We're trying to organize a men's event at a church here in Tampa. I attend a pretty mega church. So we have 8 campuses. We literally for Easter Sunday, like the church rented out the Bucks football stadium, had 25,000 plus for the service. Incredible, man. Like I think you're a man of faith, but yeah, God was just moving, man. Like it was powerful, powerful stuff. So anyways, been in talks with the church leadership, kind of the guys that run the men's group. Okay, how do we bring what Frank does? How do we bring this message, around pornography, addiction, freedom, all these things to the masses here at the church? And Josh was somebody that does a lot of touring, speaks at a lot of church. One of the guys that runs one of our campuses was in Phoenix at a different church about a year ago and had Josh come to speak. So this is a long-winded, answer to, yes, I do know Josh, and he's an incredible guy.
So I saw him speak. He actually came to St. Louis as well. And I will tell you, man, I've seen some speakers, and I don't know if I've ever seen a more powerful, like, just message around that entire topic, around porn, around forgiveness, around, Christ and faith and everything else. It was fascinating. And I was so bummed, man, because my 18-year-old was going to go with me to see him speak, and he went to state for wrestling instead. He didn't make it to state, but he went there to support his team because he's a wrestler. So he didn't get to see it. But I was just talking to Josh. I'm like, dude, where are you speaking at? I'm literally gonna go where you're at and bring my son, because it's just, the message is way too powerful. But so I'm fascinated by your journey, and you and I were talking before we hit record. I get the sense that you're like this Rubik's Cube. And like, I turn over one side and I see something I didn't even know about you. So like, not married, no kids, bodybuilder, you like competing in bodybuilding, all this sort of stuff. Like, and now you're the rebuilt, helping men with this small problem, right? It's very small, right? There's not many people that are impacted by porn.
Very few,
especially now. Like, it's not that it's really accessible or anything like that. Like, all you need is a phone or an internet connection, and there you go. You can see everything you ever wanted. But how did you even get involved with this? Like, how'd you even get started with this?
Yeah, man. It wasn't like that. There was that question, right? When you're growing up, like, what do you see yourself doing, for the rest of your life? It was like, I'm not going to be a porn addiction recovery coach. It just was not the option, man. Yeah. Like you mentioned, I competed in bodybuilding. I've had a journey through sales and corporate, training and leadership and entrepreneurship. And, I think the story with pornography goes back to me being 6 years old, man, like a curious kid. Like, you and I grew up in the same generation. There's no internet back then. Stumbled across a magazine, kind of piqued a level of curiosity that, as I was unpacking everything, I could see it began this kind of catalyst or journey of really struggling with this thing. Always obviously keeping it secrets for as long as I possibly can. And the interesting part, Larry, is now I'm grateful and blessed to have the platform that we do and talk with guys like Josh and guys that Josh are out there and spreading this message. And you've heard, Terry Crews, and you've heard some big name people that have huge platforms talk about the dangers of it. There was nobody doing that when I was 15 years old. There was not a guy out there when I was in my 20s that was talking about the dangers of pornography. There wasn't anybody even in my early 30s that was saying, hey, this is a major problem and you need to stay away from it. I was very aware, though, in my 20s that I had an irregular relationship with pornography. I probably would have never said I was a porn addict back then, because I don't think that was even two words that were put together. And I also think this is a conversation I've been having more regularly, both with our clients and just internally, trying to figure out, like, where is our message? Where are we trying to take our message now? I think a lot of the quote unquote success maybe that I had in the world, like with overcoming insecurities with being a fat kid and then accomplishing things that, 0.01% of people do with their bodies, breaking some financial barriers early on in my career that I never saw anybody in my family achieve. I think some of the success that I had in the world blinded the issues that I was having with pornography. But there was a series of events around 35 years old that radically changed my life. The first was the surrendering of my faith. I gave my life to Christ on October of 2018. And that was a life-changing moment, like it should be for everybody, right? Like when you really surrender yourself, that transformational process can begin to unfold. And, over the course of the few months after, becoming a Christian, I started to look at the things that I was doing, and drinking was one of it. I was hiding some secrets, even with some drugs still back then. Like, I was never somebody that was really struggling in the drug party scene, but it was a part of my life. Like I always was running towards something and definitely running away from something. And And I remember hearing a couple podcasts. One was a talk by Gary Wilson, who wrote the book, Your Brain on Porn. And the second was an interview with Michael John Cusick. This was right around the same time that I gave to my faith. Michael wrote the book called Surfing for God. And it talks about how we're all trying to fill this empty hole inside of us with different vices. And for most men, it becomes, lusting. And there's a powerful quote in that book from G.K. Chesterton that anytime a man knocks on a brothel door, he's knocking for God. I had this kind of awakening. Like, I think that's really the easiest way for me to kind of articulate it, is like, I had a realization when I looked myself in the mirror one day, like, you go to bed unhappy every single night. You say you've accomplished all the dreams and all the things that you want to do. You've competed in bodybuilding. You've made some success, financially. You've started multiple businesses at that point. Like, why do you still go to bed not at peace? Why do you still go to bed not liking yourself? And as I was removing things, like, the porn was the one that was screaming at me. It was like, this is it. And at that point, I knew the science behind it. So, February 14th, like, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting in the car having a conversation, and the topic of pornography came up with one of my best friends, somebody I have massive respect for. Just like you, I've interviewed a lot of SEALs. This guy happened to be, a high level former military person. And, he's talking about how he was using Wim Hof breathing exercises to manage his pornography addiction. And it shook me because this guy I had massive respect for. I'm like, how would you struggle with this thing? And I think, Larry, by him opening up and talking about his struggle, like, it gave me the freedom that I needed to share it with somebody else. Like, and that's what it took, was me opening up with somebody else. So this is February of 2019. I committed to him and the woman I was dating at the time, and every single person that would listen, I opened up over the course of weeks. I'm like, I've struggled with this. I was so met with love and grace and acceptance by everybody in my life that as I was navigating, recovery and finding freedom and getting, completely on the other side, like, my heart is healing, my brain is healing, beginning to see the world a whole lot differently. And as somebody that had been in personal development, had read a few hundred books, had attended seminars, had felt like he had a lot of tools to succeed and improve your life, the way that my life transformed by quitting porn, I felt people needed to know. And that led me to launch my podcast, what you've been on, and we're going to bring you back on. But the Superhuman Life was originally dedicated to sharing stories of recovery and kind of rock bottom to freedom stories. And the first episode changed my life because it was me taking what I'm sharing here much longer with the world. And, it got picked up pretty quickly. Apple recognized us, new and noteworthy. We kind of caught some traction. I was running a marketing agency at the time. I was, managing Frank Rich Fitness, small online fitness company, just doing the podcasting as a passion project on the side, an episode a week, like, not looking to monetize it. 6 months of, regular shows. Guys start reaching out, asking, Frank, can you help us? We're struggling. We love what you're talking about, but we feel stuck. In January of 2020, pre-COVID, months before the world shut down, like, I took a leap of faith and I said, I'll take a few guys and we'll see what we can do here. And that was, me kind of saying, hey, if you're willing to let me work with you, we'll see if we can figure this thing out together. They knew they were, joining like a case study program where I would work with them over the course of 16 weeks, regular weekly calls, I'd give them assignments weekly and then build it and tweak it. That original two guys became the foundation of Rebuilt Recovery, which, at this point is, 4+ years in, 5,000 plus guys through our books, courses, coaching and programs, well over 800 personal documented transformations of guys finding freedom. But yeah, it was finding freedom in my own life, allowing that to change me, sharing that with the world, and then taking a leap of faith that, maybe God took me through that journey and placed certain gifts inside of me so that I could help others.
I love that, man. Here's the battle that I've seen just with men and the mentality. And by the way, this used to be me. 1,000%. Actually, I used to justify it so much that I used to think, I literally used to think this, I'm doing my wife a favor. Because for a long time in our relationship, I was the high driver. I would definitely say that our drives are, I mean, my wife's in her 40s now, so like she's got a pretty high drive now for sure. So I would say our drives are definitely probably they're equal now, but for a long time it wasn't always so. So especially when I was younger, I mean, like man, I was dating her in college in my 20s and all that, and like my drive was super high. So I was always like, well, I didn't want to be rejected by her. And I also just, the drive and normal was just like, well, this is just like part of like what dudes do. Like it's just normal. So like like I would, I just take care of myself in between times we'd have sex. Right.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, I remember like justifying it to myself that like, oh, well, it's, I don't want to bother her with this because we just had it yesterday. Like I would actually think that to myself.
Yeah.
And it was like, but it was more like there wasn't anyone, and I'm talking like 10, 12 years ago, like there wasn't anyone that I was having conversations with that thought that anything was abnormal about dudes looking at porn, like ever. Like it was part of like, you get together with your friends and like, it's like part of like just what we do. We wouldn't really talk about it openly, but if the topic came up, it wasn't like, no one was like, dude, like, have you thought about staying away from that? And be like, are you kidding me? No.
None.
But it's the normalization of it, I think, that's kind of crazy. Because I grew up, I mean, you're 40, I'm 48. I grew up where and I'm sure you probably were somewhat the same, like in order to find porn, you had to go like to your buddy's house who his dad had Playboy and Penthouse magazines like hidden somewhere. Like that's how you accessed it. Or you would, go grab a VHS tape from like your buddy's parents like secret stash, right? Or something like that. That was the only, and now all you need is a phone. Like all you need is access to the internet, which I think quite frankly has made it even more normal. So I've been away from porn for, man, quite some time. I mean, I know it's been years. But a lot of people are just like, oh, it's been October of 2019. I don't know the date. I just know like, I got away from it and haven't really looked back since. And what I'll tell you is that if I post something, I don't know how much like weird comments you get or like different things, but like if I'll post something on porn, it gets a lot of engagement. But then there's so many people that are just like, they justify it. They're like, there's nothing wrong with this, like at all. Like there's nothing wrong. Like literally, like I had one guy like, and I remember I posted something along the lines of like, if you don't think porn is stealing anything from you, just think about the time that you spend doing it, right? Looking forward or doing it like, and I would bet it doesn't matter if it's a few minutes a day or if it's hours, like it's going to steal your time. And one guy literally commented and was like, this was his comment. I was shocked he was this brave. He was like, I have all my favorite scenes saved on my phone. So all I have to do is think about what scene I'm going to do. It takes me 2 minutes. I pick it and I fap away. I didn't even know fap was a word until like this. I was like, fap away? What the hell does that even mean? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, so anyway, you're battling, I think, something that I think society views as just a normal thing now.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the case?
Oh, 100%, man. I'm not sure how, tinfoil hat we can get on this podcast here, but
what does that mean? What does tinfoil hat mean?
So I think the battle is deeper than just society. I think it's it's on purpose, and I think it's being driven by forces that are beyond maybe what we kind of see here in the spiritual world, right? I agree. I don't think it's an accident that porn is readily accessible. I don't think it's an accident that 13-year-old boys have access to more naked women now in the span of 15 minutes than a king, sultan, ruler, would have had, just 100 years ago. And, I think all that is documented pretty clearly in a book that was written in the late 40s called The Naked Communists, where they outlined 50 ways that, they were going to take over the West from within. The normalization of nudity was one of them. And the readily accessibility of pornography was one of them. That was talked about before the internet was even a thing. There was a conversation around making pornography accessible to the masses. What does it do to young men? It hijacks your motivation, your drive to go out there and pursuit, just like video games, right? So if I was going to take down a country from within, like I would want their military age men as weak as possible. So yeah, the fight is real. I think it's at a deeper level than most people would want to accept. But yeah, everything you said there, man, is true, right? I mean, even if we go back 5 years, like when I was having the initial conversations on the podcast, like nobody was talking about these things. And for me, Larry, that was what the leap of faith was like, maybe I'm the person that's supposed, not that I've been the one leading the charge, because there's incredible people out there that are doing amazing things and raising awareness. But I think we've been a consistent arm in that fight. And I felt that was kind of what I was supposed to do. So yeah, the fight is deep. It's real. That's why having conversations on shows like this, and not just, I don't like the right or wrong, even language around it. Like, who cares if it's right or wrong? Like, I would ask that gentleman, like, what is healthy of what you just shared there? How is having your favorite screen readily available and knowing that within a matter of minutes, like you can have a sexual, what good comes out of that? How is that making you a better person? I mean, that's been the evolution for me, is realizing, like, morally right or wrong, like, I don't think that conversation helps anybody. Like, is it bringing you closer towards a better version of yourself? And there's nothing about sitting in front of a screen watching two other people have sex while you're pleasuring yourself that moves Frank, Larry, or any man closer to a better version of himself. So instead of shaming and condemning and guilting people for doing bad things, let's say, hey, let's become better versions of ourselves and begin to remove the things out of our life. And that's kind of been the approach and the language that we try to use. Because I do think a lot of men that have grown up with certain traditions, certain upbringings, they've just been casted with shame and guilt their entire life because they're doing wrong things. Well, yeah, we all do though. And it's like, okay, let's understand here that the internet that we're dealing with, this drug of pornography that is prevalent in 2024, is like 20 years old. Like, we're in the beginning of the cocaine epidemic, like from neuroscience, from understanding how it hijacks males' brains. So I try to skew the conversation more towards help without the guilt and without the shame. But yeah, I know I kind of went on a few tangents there, but yeah, the fight is real. And we need as many men out there leading charge in the right way, which is, incredible that you do. I don't get a lot of pushback anymore, because the guys that follow us know what the content is going to be about. The one thing that's been interesting to me is seeing how some of these pages like will limit the reach of our content. Like, I'm battling this right now on various social platforms. Is I know enough about algorithms and engagement on social media to know that certain posts, how they should perform. And when I see engagement happening on some of our posts that isn't getting the reach that it should, it tells me that there's something that is kind of keeping our message from being truly shared. So
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure, man. So I want to talk about what porn does to the brain, but I want to talk about that here in a second. Okay. Like you mentioned, even like the cocaine thing, right? And what it's actually doing. So let's remove the shame. Let's remove the guilt. And let's talk about like real things that are happening between our 2 years when we're doing this, right? Before we do that though, I think a lot of people think that porn is something that, I'm just going to say it for what it is. An unattractive guy who's super overweight, like doesn't have a girlfriend to save his life, like literally lives like in a house that like, no girl would even enter, but that is not the case whatsoever. I mean, here you are, right? You're 6'3", former bodybuilder, right? Like I wouldn't think at all you'd have a problem getting a date with anybody. And then here's the thing, like this impacts everyone, like pastors. It impacts, professional athletes. You mentioned Terry Crews, celebrities. It has literally like there is no one that is necessarily immune to this. Like, and you look at somebody like, oh, they probably don't have a problem with it. it has a way of creeping into somebody's life, no matter what amazing things are happening. But talk to us about just you've obviously have helped several men, right? And I think it would be interesting to get your feedback on like how normal this is, no matter how high of a level somebody's operating at.
Yeah, man, we've had clients in every walk of life, every industry at the highest level. You know, I just finished up working with legit champion from the Canadian Football League. Like he was on the championship team last year as the starting running back, all-star running back in the Canadian Football League. Public figure, multiple business owner outside of running the outside of playing in the professional Canadian Football League. We've had Wall Street bankers, CEOs, you mentioned pastors. We've had, you know, at this point, probably half a dozen pastors and other ministry workers come through our courses and programs as well. Nobody is immune to it. And here's what we know that the data tells us, right? Or all the research is beginning to point to is that early age exposure, due to the brain not being fully developed and that becoming a way that you process and handle emotions leads to the addictive tendencies later on in life. Nobody is immune from drug addiction. Nobody is immune from alcohol addiction. Nobody is immune from gambling or shopping addiction. And I had a fascinating conversation on my podcast. Well, I've had him on twice. Kashif Khan, he's the founder of the DNA company or My DNA company. One of those two, the DNA or My DNA. And what they do is they have a technology that does DNA scans and they're able to really from a genetic code tell you certain predispositions that people would have, how your brain literally will process and turn over dopamine is dictated by a certain gene that we have. And the interesting thing is, you know, when you do this for a living and you talk to enough people, you begin to see patterns and trends. Yes, there's a lot of guys out there that are living at home, not pursuing anything out in the world, undriven, unmotivated, like living in mom's basement. There's a lot of those guys, right? Like, you know, there is thinking that's the person that's addicted to porn is half the truth. But when you do this long enough, also having a lot of conversations with recovering alcohol addicts, recovering drug addicts, like I was seeing patterns and trends of highly successful people that were struggling with addiction. And I posed the question to Kashif, who studies DNA, and he was able to point to a specific gene in our brain that determines how we take in, process, and turn over dopamine. So there's certain people, because they have this specific wiring, they will process dopamine quickly. So that means it comes in, they get these massive spikes, whether it's through pleasure or reward, they turn it over quickly, which means that they now feel the negative side effects of dopamine, which will just be, depending on where you get it from, just lack of motivation, intrusive thoughts. So you'll either want to go seek it and get it from more pleasure or go get it from reward. Well, if you don't understand this and you've maybe been blinded by some of the success, right? You know, you accomplish all your goals in bodybuilding, you were able to start some successful businesses, you passed the bar exam, or you became a doctor, or, you know, you've had career success while watching porn. Well, you don't think, well, the porn is holding me back. But then you begin to go deeper in yourself and ask questions. Well, why are you socially awkward? Like maybe it's impacting you sexually. Here's, well, maybe you're disconnected in your relationships. So nobody is immune to it. And in fact, I think I've seen in our experience, a lot of very high achieving, successful guys that lie to themselves. And then for those guys, the hard part is like, it gets to the point where they're on the verge of losing everything. And you know, men, right? Men need like a real wake up call to actually change. And oftentimes it's, wife catches you, wife is on the verge of losing, or you've already lost it all because you've been so disconnected and unpresent in the relationship. So yeah, I don't think anybody's immune to it. When you really understand the wiring and how addictive this thing can be, then you can begin to see it for what it is.
Interesting. You know, I'm curious about, so I have found just through my own journey with this that, I have found, I mean, I'm still a human being. I still get tempted, right? But what I do is I keep a running list of 5 things that I can do when I'm tempted. So like I joke with my guys in the Alliance all the time. I'm like, if you ever get a random hat or shirt from me, like, you know, from our shop, like, you know, our DEA swag or Live Legendary stuff, just know that I was tempted by porn.
Yeah.
You know, but like, no kidding around. Like one of the things on my list is send one of our guys, you know, something from the store, like whether it's a hat or a t-shirt. Another one is, you know, send my wife a loving text or write my kids a note or do something, you know, basically replacing the good behavior with the temptation. I have found that to be tremendously effective.
Yeah.
And but also you know, I'm not dumb either. Like there are times where I'm like, okay, I did that, now what? You know what I mean? And like there are just some times, and the only time to be honest, that I really get tempted anymore is two things. One, when I'm like super stressed, like really overwhelmed by something, and I know the cues now, because I'm like, well, the reason I want to look at porn is because I don't want to think about the stress.
Mm-hmm.
It actually, weird thing is it actually now, because I think I've been away from it, so it doesn't really have to do with the porn anymore. It's just I don't want to go think about that thing that just happened or whatever I'm dealing with. The second one is like, you know, if I'm home all by myself, which by the way never happens. There's 6 people in this house. So, but on the very rare occasion, that's when like I'm like, right. But usually what I'll do is I'll leave. You know, I'll leave my house. Like I'm not trying to say I leave because like I can't fight the thing. I leave because, number one, I don't like being in my house by myself, because my house is always so crazy and loud with 4 boys, you know, and a dog. And like it's always chaos here, but I love and embrace the chaos. And when it's quiet, it's like I almost don't know what to do with myself. So on days like that, what I'll do is I'll go for a run. I'll do something fitness related. I'll go to the gym, you know, basically just get out of the environment. And literally, as soon as I get in my car, I'm not even thinking about it anymore. Like it's gone. It's on, and that's another thing too. Is like if you can buy yourself like a handful of minutes, I don't know. This is just me, to do something else. It's almost like that temptation just really goes down tremendously. But how does your approach work for men?
Yeah. Great question. And I love what you do. The first bit with like the service or giving the hat or the t-shirt to somebody. So, you know, I'll give you kind of the full breakdown of our approach. You know, I say we're the only company that has a fully integrated, holistic, and growth-centric approach to porn addiction recovery. So we really try to look at the whole man or the man as a whole, right? And these different parts, his fitness, his mental health, his emotional health, his spiritual health, and kind of address it from all of those pieces. But we have a month right in the middle of our program that is more outwardly focused. So month 1, very internal looking, healing any internal wounds, healing the root cause of it, identifying the root cause, identifying triggers, figuring out what boundaries need to be put in place. We all do that in the first month, casting a new vision for the man that we can become. Month 2 is kind of outwardly focused. And this is where I say we help guys reshape the heart. So everything is kind of right? Rebuild recovery, reboot your life is kind of the core curriculum that we put guys through, helps them rebuild their body, rewire their brain, and reshape the heart. The reshaping of heart, I say, is changing how we see people, because porn obviously places women specifically, but most often, most humans as objects in your life. It's like, what can I get out of them? So during that month, it's very service oriented, like literally doing things like you're doing, waking up one morning and sending 3 random text messages to somebody, like, or 3 different people, like just gratitude messages. Like, hey man, it's been a long time since we've connected. Just been thinking about you. Love you. If there's anything you need from me, I'm praying for you. Don't hesitate to reach out. You're not expecting anything in return. Or we had them go do random acts of kindness or actually dedicate 2 hours to service. And, you know, what I see that doing, right, you know, is reshaping how you see people and how you see yourself as well. Pornography, very, it's for you, right? It's very it is a selfish behavior. It's like, you even said it. I watch porn when I don't feel good. So I use objectifying and exploiting other people to make myself feel a certain type of way. So when you're triggered to do that, the best thing to do is figure out, what can I do for somebody else? Begin to think outwardly, right? Serve, love, give to other people. And then the byproduct is what comes back to you. So I love that. I don't even know if like that's what you thought that you were doing, but I think it aligns a lot with what we do. But yeah, like I said, we try to take a fully integrated approach. So it's built on a biblical foundation, you know. So I say I'm a man of faith that runs a porn addiction recovery organization, as opposed to we are a faith-based program. which there's a lot of great organizations and companies out there. There's a lot of great church organizations as well that do that. We tried to position ourselves separate from that, and people know that, hey, when they come into Rebuilt Recovery, they're working with a man of faith. It's going to be built on biblical principles. But if you're not somebody that maybe subscribes to the Bible worldview, or you don't have even that as a belief system for you, we're not going to turn you away. Like, we're still going to welcome you and accept you in. It's allowed me to help people from all walks of life, 20 plus countries at this point, atheists, agnostics, Muslims, Buddhists, it doesn't matter. So built on a biblical foundation, broken into, really 3 core components over 3 phases. So the core components is a literal structured program. So I believe the only way to overcome this for good is to become the man that is no longer addicted to porn. And in that word become rests a massive identity change, right? Like, you must become a new individual. Any lasting transformational change is going to be rooted in identity change first. When I hear you say, I'm still tempted in the thought of maybe pornography, I was like, well, Larry somewhere hasn't completely removed the option of pornography out of his life. Now, I don't think you struggled with it to the depth that I did, or even maybe the men that we work with. So maybe looking at it that way wasn't necessary for you, but as a new identity, or with the new identity of a porn-free man, the option when you're triggered to even look at it is no longer there, right? It's like somebody that used to smoke cigarettes. If you say, hey, would you like a cigarette? No, I'm trying to quit, or no, thank you, I no longer smoke. We want to take on the identity of, no matter what's happening in my life, no matter how triggered I may be, porn isn't the option for us. And I think that helps shape a new identity. So that's our approach. And we're going to give you a program to kind of walk you through that. And it starts with knowing how you've got here. So understanding root cause of the issue, but then really casting a vision for the man that you can become. So we want to set an aim into the future, whether it's a year, 3, 5 years, that we begin to work towards. Bringing in the science behind this, right? Dopamine can be released within the pursuit of new goals. So if we wake up every day working towards becoming this man, and we're clear and intentional about the steps that we make and recognize ourselves, we begin to feel better as we move closer towards becoming that man. So a lot of guys struggle at the end of the day, right? It's been long. You haven't maybe accomplished the things that you wanted to do. You haven't kept all the promises. You skipped the gym. You hit the snooze. You didn't get the walk in. You didn't, write a note for your wife. We take a very structured approach to making sure every day is a win, and you recognize that. So the need to satisfy yourself after a losing day is no longer there. And then through the time of staying abstinent and beginning to pull on these levers, month 3 is more about creating new habits, new physical challenges. We literally have brush hand with the opposite, brush your teeth with the opposite hand, like just kind of pulling on different things that kind of create new patterns within your brain. So a program, there's a massive community of guys that we regularly fellowship with. That's a big part of it. Any addiction recovery successful company will tell you that the community and the foundation is a massive part of it. And then we bring in the one-to-one support and accountability, just to make sure, especially early on, like when you say you're doing certain things, like, are people following up? Are you being held accountable to your word? So yeah, that's everything kind of in a big, snapshot, 30,000 overfoot view, I guess.
Very cool. Can we talk just a little bit more before we wrap up here? I want to talk a little bit more about that, the temptation thing, because you got me super curious about this. Because I as you were talking, you probably saw my eyes kind of wander. I was thinking about an analogy, and you just challenged me with something. I'll be honest. Like, I'm like, I was like, that's really interesting. Like, maybe there's further work for me to do, even though I don't entertain that habit anymore, but like, that's still, it's in my mind every now and again. But so let me ask you this. I'll give you an example of an analogy that I have. My kids joke with me a lot because I don't eat fast food. Like, I just don't. Like, I haven't for years. Like, I don't eat Taco Bell. I don't eat McDonald's. I don't eat Burger King. I don't eat Chick-fil-A. Like, I don't eat, I never do, like, ever. And my kids are like, why don't you eat that stuff? I was like, why would I eat that stuff? I don't eat that stuff. Like, I don't eat that stuff. Like, it just doesn't compute for me.
Yeah.
Like, I won't eat it. Like, even if my kids are like wanting to go through McDonald's, I will, and I don't get them McDonald's a whole lot. Like, it's very rare, like maybe once a year at the most. But they'll joke with me. They're like, what are you going to get? I'm like, yeah, nothing. I'll eat at home. And they're like, you don't want like a Big Mac? I'm like, no, like, I don't eat that. So like, I have an identity that I don't eat that, right? Especially McDonald's. I'm like, I don't eat McDonald's, period.
Yeah.
And, but it's interesting. Like, I don't need and that was my 18-year-old who just walked by, so I gave him a thumbs up because he looks all handsome and snazzy. He's all dressed up. But the interesting thing is this, like, I don't need McDonald's to survive, right? And it's not necessarily like what am I trying to say here? So sex drive. Well, shoot, man, as I'm saying this out loud, maybe it is. Like, so the urge to reproduce and the urge to have sex, I feel like it's such a human thing in us, right? Like, it's such a drive in us, right? And we have so many different, like, even emotions about it, right? Like when we have sex, we feel love, we feel validation, we feel all these things, right? When we don't have sex, we feel rejected, we feel sometimes, that kind of thing. So it's like, I can pass McDonald's without even being tempted. Like, I have no desire for it whatsoever, but I also have an identity in that. But when it comes to sex, I guess the story I'm telling myself is it's such like a primal thing that do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to figure this out as I'm saying out loud.
I 100% know exactly what you're saying. And I guess, the challenge then becomes, right? Like, are you actually thinking about procreating and having sex in the moments that you just explained to me that you're triggered, which is when you're avoiding doing work or when you're home alone? Like, are those scenarios where your brain is even if you want to go deep inside, like, your animal part of your brain is not like, now's the opportune time for us to have sex, right? No, the porn has become a pattern of behavior that processes other internal, neurological, not even neurological, neurophysiological issues, right? Stress, anger, avoidance. Those are the times that we go to distract ourselves with pornography. Like, if you told me, hey man, when I see a beautiful woman, I then think about maybe having sex with my wife, I'd be like, yeah, that's the natural instinct of man wants to procreate with beautiful woman. Yes, I understand that. But I think what you say, a lot of guys accept that, right? Because of that processing that I just watched you go through in real time. Dude, I did that for decades, right? I think if you look at it through a different lens though, right? When I'm home alone, I'm not thinking about procreating. When I'm avoiding work, I'm not thinking about, actually having sex. I'm thinking about avoiding those things. So it's become an alternative for those things. Like, I got to cook the chicken. So instead of doing that, I'm going to avoid it by getting the fast food. There's a better analogy, right?
Yeah. So my mind is blown right now because, like, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Because, like, even as you're like, do I go to, like, even if I don't want to cook, I am not going to eat McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like, period.
Yeah.
Like, there's no desire whatsoever. And you're exactly right. Like, the 100%, man. Wow. As I think about this and you took me through that, see, this is why you need to go follow Frank.
Yeah, and this is good, man, because I know you've had a lot of conversations with many of my friends on the show about this. So coming in, I'm like, God, what is Larry even like? What are he and I going to talk about that he hasn't already approached? Like, dude, this makes me feel amazing that, like, you had this
is good
epiphany here moment, right? Because that means the audience, hopefully, a lot of guys have maybe had the same wake up call here as well.
Well, I mean, to be honest, like, I've never really, like, food. I don't. Like, I love food, but, like, I have control over food. Alcohol is not a huge vice in my life, like, at all.
Yeah.
Drugs, not a big, it's, not a thing in my life. But porn from an early age, like, cause I was actually, I had a relative when I was, 9 show it to me on a VHS tape, and he thought it was hilarious. And, like, that was the first time I ever saw it. And I was freaked out, but I was also intrigued, right? And I then, like, sought it out, like, as a teenager, right? But the interesting thing is, like I said, for years I've been away from this. But the interesting thing is like, well, I just don't do it anymore. Like, and I've always actually my mentality is like, well, I'm tempted, but I don't do it. Well, I'm tempted, but I don't do it. But the thing about it is that what I just realized by talking to you is that there's a difference between being, like, enticed by my wife, like, and being like, oh, she looks good today. That's a very different experience than, because if I'll be 100% honest, right? That when I'm tempted by it, there's something else going on in my life that I'm trying to get away from.
Yep. Yeah. Dude, your example, your story journey was probably so many of the guys listening here as well as mine also, right? Young introduction, probably presented in a way that you can't tell anybody about this, right? Like you immediately know that it's something wrong. It's kind of done in secrecy, right? Like nobody knows what we're doing. And then every time you have to see it, right? I remember having to find the shady convenience store, right? That was like owned by, Ali, because they had, they had the magazine, rack over there. That was, they put it behind black film, right? Like we didn't know what was behind the black film. So one kid distracts Ali over here while another kid snatches one and runs out the door. Anyways, I just admitted to a crime there on a live podcast. But anyways, you start doing things that you're not supposed to be doing secretly. So now you're attaching these certain behaviors together, right? Watching porn is done in secrecy. So when you're a 48-year-old man and you're home alone and it can be a secret, right? That old pattern kind of presents itself. Oh, well, this is the time that we're supposed to be watching porn, right? Because this is what Larry did when he was a kid, when he was by himself. And this is what Larry still thinks about doing when he's a grown man by himself. So it's so interesting, right? That's why that early age exposure is so important, or not important, but important to understand from a parenting level, but also from a man that is kind of going through the journey. Like, I got to figure this out from like some of those root causes. Like, how was I using it when I was young? How did that develop certain patterns? But dude, I hopefully just had a major awakening for so many guys to realize that your porn use is not an excuse for a high sex drive, because the behaviors are not linked in any way.
Yeah, that is so true, man. Oh my God. I learned something. I learned a lot of new things on this show, man.
Dude.
And, what's really interesting is, thank you for, honestly, man, thanks for shining a mirror in my face, because I'm sitting here thinking like, that really doesn't have anything to do with the other at all. Like, and to be honest, like I said, I've been on this, porn-free journey for a long time. I'd never put those two and two together. But then again, I've never gone through a program either. Yeah. So like, I've never been guided through this. I just, through my own like faith walk, and you really want to know something funny? One of the biggest motivators for just completely ridding myself of porn is that I remember years and years ago, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do without this for 90 days. I'm just gonna do 90 days, and I did it. I did 90 days, dude. I had the best sex with my wife in that window of time. I was like, why do I even look at porn? This is freaking awesome, right? I mean, even like the times where like, there's a few days or even a week, like we're not doing it, but the times we do it, it's so intense. Like, I don't know if any of your other guys have described this to you, but I felt like when I got rid of porn, like all of my senses were heightened, and like everything like during sex with my wife was insanely better. It was almost like I experienced it very differently and way better than I ever would have thought. And that was like a key driver in like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, dude, I haven't had a married guy successfully go through our program and tell me that his sex life didn't improve. And in fact, I remember one guy specifically, Clay Curry, very successful business owner out of the South, father of 2 kids. I think they were 5 and 2 when he came to us. He told me in his kind of exit interview, like he felt like he had sex with his wife for the first time in our program. Like he was so disconnected. This dude birthed 2 kids with his wife, right? That means they've had sex at least twice and probably a lot more than that. But he felt like they actually had sex together, and he wasn't having sex with an image of a screen or a visualization of what he was watching. Dude, I've even talked to guys that had to watch porn while having sex. So like it gets so bad in the way that it just causes that erectile dysfunction, or the inability. Like if you have consumed it thousands of times, the only way to get an erection is through a screen. Well, in time, the woman in real life is, you're going to be so desensitized to it that you're going to need the other, right? So yeah, we've heard that. I mean, I've heard from countless wives that have reached out. Thank you for giving me my husband back. My challenge to any guy out there that is, maybe not even saying, hey, I have a massive problem, is do what Larry did, right? Commit to 30, 60, 90 days without it. And it'll reveal one of 2 things to you. first, if you can't go 30, 60, 90 days without it, there's your sign that there's a problem. Go address it and get some help. If you do abstain, maybe it didn't have the stronghold on you that it did some guys, and you get on the other side, multiple areas of your life will improve. You'll be closer, more connected with your wife, with your spouse. You have deeper in sexual intimacy with her. You'll probably have more drive, more focus, more clarity. You'll feel more joy and passion out of the things that you're doing at work and in the world. You'll probably be more driven physically to go accomplish your physical goals. You'll probably sleep better. Everything will improve. And then it's the realization, okay, well, if my life improved without it, then that means that it's holding me back. So like, let's just keep it out of there. So yeah, I love this conversation, man. I'm grateful to be here.
Same, man. Same. This was good. I really enjoyed this conversation, man. And I learned a lot from you as well, which makes me believe, obviously, that if men are, if they're working with you, they're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
They're going to improve. Gents, I want you guys to go out and follow Frank, and his program and everything he's posting, especially on Instagram, that kind of thing. But Frank, I want you to actually, what is the best way for guys to connect with you?
Yeah, the best place to connect with me is just on Instagram. Like you said, that's where I'm most active, live, engaged. So follow there. It's at Coach Frank Rich. Send me a message. I'm still active and I reply to every single message. If you want to get more of our content, we obviously have the interview show, The Superman Life. You can find that on all podcast platforms. I have a 3 times a week shorter solo podcast as well called The Rebuilt Man, where we get very tactical tips, strategies, approaches. Like, we're literally giving away the blueprint. Oftentimes I'll pull up a portion of our course and that becomes an episode. So, if you're looking for the help, the podcast is a great place. That's called The Rebuilt Man. But IG is the best place to connect with me. We post daily there. And, if you have questions or, interested in pursuing some help, just drop me a message there.
Gotcha, man. I love it. Now listen, guys, I want you to think about something as we wrap up here. Frank is a single dude and not even a dad. And I'm not trying to stereotype single dudes, but like I think stereotypically, like, people think, well, if you're married, then you're probably getting some action on the regular and that kind of thing. But if you're single, it's like, well, you maybe have like every excuse in the book to like, what am I trying to say here? Cleanly, I guess, like you're trying to like, cover what you get things done, what you need done in between sessions with maybe a girlfriend or like a hookup here and there. But like, look, what I can tell you, I can attest to this. Life got significantly better when I got rid of this stuff myself. And it was a very pleasant surprise of like how great things got with my wife and I. And here's what I'll tell you too. Yes, it got great inside the bedroom, but it got really freaking great outside of it too. But like, and that was really cool too. So a lot of these things that, I'm sure you hear this all the time, Frank, that like, I didn't really understand like how it was impacting me until I got away from it. I'm sure you hear that a lot.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So guys, go and follow Frank. All you have to do is just head over to thedadedge.com/Friday156 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday156 for this show. We'll have all of his links in the show notes, and you guys can connect with him there. And but Frank, this was awesome, man. Thanks for the good lessons, and thanks for the conversation. I loved it.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Thank you, guys.
Back at you.